Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into a story that honestly feels like one of those ultra-realistic, epic historical films. Picture this. It's roughly 1700 BC. You've got the warm, golden sunlight of the ancient world beating down on these sweeping Canaanite landscapes and dusty shepherd camps. And right at the center of it all is Joseph. He's this handsome 17-year-old Hebrew kid, olive skin, shoulder-length dark wavy hair, wearing this incredible, colorful robe. And his life? Well, it's about to be turned completely upside down.
So here's a question to kick things off. What if our most painful moments are actually the beginning of a much greater plan? It's a heavy thought, right? I mean, just take a second and imagine how you would respond if you were completely hated, deeply betrayed, and literally sold into slavery by the very people you trusted most in the world. Most of us would think, okay, that's it, my story's over. But as we'll see in the source material today, for Joseph, what looked like an absolute dead end was actually the violent, painful beginning of a massive, unseen plan.
Section 1. The Favored Dreamer, Jacob's Special Love, and the Colorful Robe.
So Joseph's father, Jacob, was not exactly hiding his favoritism. He openly favored Joseph, even gifting him that magnificent multicolored robe we mentioned earlier. And naturally, this sparked some intense jealousy among his older brothers. But then came the dreams. And you have to look at the sheer scale of these two prophecies. In the first one, they're out in the field binding grain, and his brother's bundles actually bow down to his. Then in the second dream, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bow before him. These weren't just weird, vague dreams. They were incredibly bold prophecies of future authority. When Joseph shared them, oh man, his brothers were absolutely furious. They mocked him, saying, "What, do you intend to reign over us?" Even Jacob kind of questioned the sheer scale of it, though the text notes he quietly kept the words in his heart.
Section 2. Betrayal and the Pit, the brothers' cruel plot. Fast forward a bit, the brothers are out tending the flocks and they see that unmistakable, colorful robe approaching from a distance. And all that brewing hatred just boils over. The rapid escalation of their betrayal here is honestly chilling. First, they violently strip away the robe. Then they throw him into this deep, dry pit. And while Joseph is down there desperately begging for mercy, what do? They calmly sit down and eat a meal. Finally, one of the brothers, Judah, gets the idea to profit off the whole thing. They pull him up and literally sell their own flesh and blood to a passing caravan of Ishmaelite merchants for just 20 pieces of silver.
Just like that, in the blink of an eye, everything changes. His home, his family, his freedom, it's all gone. Joseph basically disappears into the vast desert, stripped of his colorful robe, and he's about to be dressed in the simple white linen tunic of a slave. The utter devastation of that moment is almost unimaginable.
But here is the crucial point, the absolute pivot on which this entire historical narrative turns. The text gives us this exact, powerful phrase, "The Lord was with Joseph." Even as he's being dragged away in chains, looking back at the only land he's ever known, he wasn't actually alone. In this impossibly dark moment of being sold into slavery, God had not abandoned him.
Meanwhile, back in Canaan, the brothers carry out this tragic, awful deception. They dip Joseph's beautiful robe in goat's blood and take it back to their father. Jacob's heart is completely shattered. He obviously concludes that a wild animal must have devoured his favorite son, and he just sinks into this deep, inconsolable mourning. He weeps for days, entirely unaware that his son is actually still alive and journeying toward a foreign empire.
And this brings up a really challenging question for all of us. Why remain faithful when doing the right thing costs you literally everything? In our minds, let's sort of pan the camera away from the tents of Canaan and over to the epic, towering palaces of ancient Egypt. Everything familiar to Joseph has been wiped away. Yet, as we are about to see, even in a completely foreign culture, his deep-rooted character and his faith remain absolutely unchanged.
Section 3. Slavery and Success, Rising in Potiphar's House.
So arriving in Egypt, Joseph is purchased by a man named Potiphar, who happens to be the captain of Pharaoh's royal guard. Now, Joseph could have easily been bitter, right? But instead, his unwavering integrity really shines through. He works honestly, he's incredibly efficient, and he treats others with respect. And because the Lord blesses everything he touches, he gets promoted again and again until he's literally overseeing this entire massive Egyptian household. Under Joseph's management, the fields produce abundant crops, and true prosperity flows into Potiphar's estate.
Section 4. Temptation and False Accusation, the Cost of Integrity.
By now, Joseph had grown into a very handsome young man, and unfortunately, he catches the eye of Potiphar's wife. She starts putting intense daily pressure on him to sleep with her, but his response is one of the most powerful moments in the text. He tells her, "My master trusts me with everything he owns. How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Notice carefully what he does there. He prioritizes divine integrity over temporary pleasure, or even his own personal safety.
Well, the tension finally boils over. One day the house is completely empty, and she physically grabs him by his cloak, demanding he stay. Joseph realizes in a split second that you just can't reason with this kind of temptation. You can't talk your way out of it. He simply flees. He runs out of the house so fast that he actually leaves his cloak clutched right in her hands. He chooses physical escape as the ultimate victory over temptation. But the contrast here highlights a really harsh, agonizing injustice. His action was fleeing temptation to honor God and his master. The consequence? Falsely accused. Humiliated by his rejection, Potiphar's wife weaves this vicious lie using his abandoned cloak as evidence. And without even allowing Joseph to mount a single word of defense, he is thrown straight into the royal prison.
Yet as those heavy prison doors slam shut, the source text repeats that incredibly comforting phrase once again. The Lord was with Joseph. Even down in the dark, damp dungeon, stripped of his position once again, God's presence remained perfectly steadfast. His external circumstances were absolutely terrible, for sure, but his spiritual reality hadn't changed one bit.
Section 5. Dreams in the Dungeon. Interpreting for Pharaoh's servants.
Because of his incredible character, the warden actually puts Joseph in charge of the other prisoners, which eventually brings him face to face with two very prominent new inmates, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and his chief baker. One morning, both of these guys wake up really troubled by these mysterious dreams. Joseph humbly tells them that interpretations belong to God alone, but asks them to share. The cupbearer describes a vine with 3 branches, and he's squeezing grapes into Pharaoh's cup. The baker describes having 3 baskets of bread on his head with birds eating right out of the top basket.
Joseph delivers the interpretations, and man, they are drastically different. For the cupbearer, the 3 branches mean 3 days until Pharaoh restores him to his royal position. Joseph actually pleads with him, saying, "Please, when you are restored, remember me and mention me to Pharaoh." But for the baker, the news is incredibly grim. The 3 baskets mean that in 3 days, Pharaoh will execute him. And exactly 3 days later, on Pharaoh's birthday, both of these highly specific predictions come true perfectly.
Section 6. The Forgotten Prisoner, Waiting on Perfect Timing.
Now you would think interpreting that dream was his big moment of breakthrough, right? But the cupbearer goes back to the luxury of the palace and completely forgets about the young Hebrew man. Days pass, then weeks, then months. Entire full years go by. Just imagine the mental endurance required here. He's completely forgotten by the one man who could actually help him, yet he just keeps faithfully trusting God year after year.
But as the text reveals, the prison was not the end of the line. It was actually God's classroom. It's so deeply human to want immediate rescue when life goes completely off script. But every single painful delay, every lonely night in that cell was part of a divine, perfect timing. God was actively molding Joseph's character, preparing him for a level of leadership and destiny that he couldn't possibly comprehend from inside those stone walls. Which leaves us right on the edge of our seats, because God's timing is about to align perfectly. Are you ready to see how a single dream changes absolutely everything for the forgotten prisoner? How God uses one more vision to suddenly pull Joseph from the dungeon and place him right before Pharaoh himself. Keep that curiosity alive, because the true climax of Joseph's cinematic story is just around the corner. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you in the next one.